Hey everybody, it is your boy NCSO7 here, and it's Halloween. Maybe. I don't know. It will be once the video goes up. And I thought for Halloween that I just wanted to talk about a game series that I love a lot. Probably my favorite Nintendo series of all time, and very fitting with this time of year, Luigi's Mansion. Probably my favorite Nintendo series ever. I say probably because, honestly, I'm not completely sure. But I've loved this series a lot. I've played these games so many goddamn times for so many hours on end that I just kind of want to talk about them. And that's why we're here today, to do a full-on Luigi's Mansion retrospective. Now, I'm not necessarily going to do full-on reviews of these games. I have done review of these games, as their own videos on my channel before, so, check them out, even though they're kind of difficult to find. I'll leave some as end cards at the end of this video, but with that being said, I just want to talk about these games and what I love about them so much and what I don't love about them so much. So let's hop in immediately with, obviously, the first Luigi's Mansion game being released on the GameCube. Probably the most unique of the entire series. Now, when this game first released, there wasn't a game like this at all. There was no other game like this, let alone Mario game. All Mario games up to that point were bright, colorful, and happy. This game was a lot more dark and gloomy and realistic, which was very different from any real other Mario game at that point. And that brings me to the first pro of the first game. It is so memorable. Seriously, even compared to the rest of the series, I still feel like the first game offers the most strong experience because it's nothing like the other Mario games. It doesn't look it doesn't sound it, it actually feels like its own unique thing. And uniqueness is always a great thing. Maybe. I don't know. But even so, it does work very well here. It's such a memorable game. And while, yeah, people didn't like it that much when it first released, nowadays, I see nothing but praise for this. And something that Nintendo doesn't really seem to ever want to do again. You'll see eventually why, but they would eventually change the style for the future games in the series, which I can somewhat understand, but even then, this original style worked so well. It was so good looking. And also, it just worked really well as a small little game. This is a launch title for the GameCube, but it was only like 3 hours to beat the game. It was kind of like a high score game. Essentially, you'd have to try and get as much money as possible and whatnot, as when you complete each area in the game, which there's only 4 of, your money totals will be totaled up. And that's kind of the basic idea of the high score. Honestly, Luigi's Mansion's replayability doesn't necessarily come from having a bunch of objectives to complete, but more so just playing the game over and over, because it's so good. Seriously, everything here feels so good. The gameplay, while unique, works very well, catching ghosts within your flashlight and then vacuuming them up, going from room to room to room, figuring out how to deal with the portrait ghosts, which add a lot more variety to the ghosts you caught, and actually gave some lore and life to the mansion that you explore, which was another thing. It really stuck to that creepiness with the lore. It feels real. It kind of feels realistic. Well, it's not like the deepest lore ever. There is some disturbing stuff in that lore, which I like a lot. And really, really wish that the other games would do, but not really, which is kind of sad. But even so, though, I love the original Luigi's Mansion. It just feels so good. The gameplay feels really good. I love the style with the creepiness and whatnot. And I also love that it expanded the story and also changed the basic story as well. It isn't just Bowser kidnapped Peach, go and save her. No, your own brother is kidnapped by some Boo with a crown on it named King Boo. You need to save him, and you can really feel how Luigi really wants to save his brother. Even despite how scared he is of all the ghosts and all that stuff, he still wants his brother safe and sound. And it just works so much better in this case. But With all that said, there are a couple things that I do have issues with. One thing is that the 100% for this game is kind of difficult to do. Most of that comes from getting all of the gems and getting enough money to get the highest possible rank at the end of the game. But even then though, there are a lot of annoying things as well. Like, first of all, there's certain golden mice, which are these mice that you can suction up that give you lots of money that are triggered by chance. So essentially, you'd have to go into a room, and whenever you go into a room, there's like who even knows, it's not a high chance of golden mice spawning. And this can just be kind of annoying because they just won't spawn. I don't really like this much at all, because they also hide whenever in like the cheese, when you scan the cheese in certain places in the mansion with the Game Boy Horror. So for the rules to be different is weird. Also, the boos in Area 4 can be absolutely ridiculous, and sometimes the boos can just be so obnoxious. They can just fly into the worst possible location, and then you have to take like a 2-minute trek to that room to even catch the boo. It's very annoying. And even so, the game really is short and doesn't have much content beyond the end game, but even so, though, I still think the original Luigi's Mansion is absolutely amazing. Really, really good. And everyone should try it out. It would be 12 years later, but eventually we would actually get a sequel to this game called Luigi's Mansion 2 or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon in the US. Never been fond of that name choice. I don't know why they ever thought this is a good idea. But Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon was actually my first Luigi's Mansion game, as I remember getting this in a Target around the time it released, I think. And I was kind of interested in it, and I gave it a shot, and that's how I even got into Luigi's Mansion. Now, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is different from the first game. It's kind of one of these things where it takes a lot of steps forward, but it also takes a lot of steps backward as well. One of the big things is that there's no portrait ghosts at all. It's all just generic ghosts that you fight this time around, which is quite a big turnoff, as the portrait ghosts really made the mansion from the first game feel a lot more alive and felt like it was actually a real place, whereas the mansions in Dark Moon kind of just feel like places for ghosts, I guess, to hang out. There's not really a lot of life there, but the ghosts that are present do have a lot more to them. They will interact a lot more with the environment, whether it's using kitchen utensils to fight you or some other stuff. But even so, though, it really does suck that there's no portrait ghosts. Also, the game ditches the open-ended style of that of the original game and replaces it with a mission style. Essentially, you have to clear missions and whatnot. Now, this is both a positive and a negative, because on the positive side, it does open replayability up a lot, as there are a bunch of things you can do. There's gems you can collect. While the gems don't really have any monetary value at all, it is still pretty cool to at least have something to collect. At the very least, there's a bunch of secret areas you can explore, and each mission changes up the environment in one way or another. But with the mission structure, it does take away that free roamingness of the first game, which isn't the best, because it kind of just feels weird. There's some missions where there'll just be a door blocked with some sort of object that and it's not even like you can get around it. It literally prevents you from exploring, which is just stupid. I don't know why they thought this is a good idea, but they did think it was. I guess I have no idea. I don't know why they did that. I understand it was on the 3DS, but even so, they should have at least made it, I don't know. They should have at least made it more open-ended. And the last thing is obviously the art style. Now, I touched on this before, but this is when they changed the art style from the original creepy, pseudo-realistic style of the first game, and with the much more cartoony style of that of most Mario games. And I'm not gonna lie, it actually does work well here. I honestly do feel like the original style wouldn't work that well on the 3DS. So I do welcome this change. Although I will be honest, even if I do still love that original style a little more, I do feel like this style works a lot better for the 3DS. But it's whatever. And that's my only negatives with the game. But this game offered so much stuff. First of all, it improved on the gameplay of the first game tenfold. Like seriously, catching ghosts in this game is so much more fun. like dodging their attacks, and they're a lot bigger health bars. It's a lot of fun to do. It's just much more fun to play in general. And it's not even just the ghost catching that's more fun, but also the level design. Now, the first game had its fair share of puzzles, but that mostly came through the design of the portrait ghosts and figuring out how to expose their heart. However, in this game, there's a lot more puzzles, similar to that of like Zelda game dungeons with their puzzles. And I won't lie, some of the puzzles in Dark Moon are a little annoying, and I do feel like the game is a little too overloaded with them at times. But I wouldn't really say it's the worst thing ever. It's a welcome change. Since there weren't portrait ghosts in this game anyways, I guess they did kind of have to put puzzles in there. But even so, they did kind of overload it a little too much. It does feel a little bloated at times when some missions are just loaded with them. And some missions are just fetch quests, as you'll get an item at the end of one mission, but then something will take the item away, and then you'll have to waste another mission trying to get that same exact item. A lot of the missions feel like fetch quests at sometimes, and it's kind of boring. But even so, though, it's not all that bad, because again, the level design's really good, and catching ghosts is really good. The music's really good as well. I think Dark Moon has the best soundtrack of them all. Also, Dark Moon would be the first time we would actually see a multiplayer mode in Luigi's Mansion through the use of Scare Scraper, where it's basically randomly generated floors that you can go through with your friends to either catch all the ghosts or find the exit or whatever. It's really fun, even though it never really worked that well, personally, but it's still good. Dark Moon is a game that I love a lot, given it was my first experience, but I do recognize its flaws, and I don't think it's anywhere near a perfect game per se, but I still think it's a really good game. And honestly, yeah, it'll never necessarily hold a candle to that of the original game, but even so, it's still really, really good in its own ways. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this one as I don't have as much to say, but we would eventually see a version of Dark Moon that would be released in the arcades, known as Luigi's Mansion Arcade, which is basically, unlike the other games where it was much more exploration-based, somewhat, this time it's basically a rail shooter. Essentially, the arcade cabinet is made up of this little space house thing that you go into, and there you can actually get an actual poltergeist, hold an actual poltergeist, and actually catch ghosts in an on-rail shooter kind of way. You can see from the footage, you essentially aim at the screen to shine your light, and then you pull the opposite way they're going to try and catch them. It's honestly kind of fun, and honestly isn't really that bad. Definitely worth trying it out if you ever can, but I don't really have a lot to say about it. I will say, though, they do not give you much health. Seriously, they give you 2 hearts that can be depleted very quickly, and then you have to put another credit in to get them back. This is one of those ticket games, but even so, though, I still think it's quite some fun, and definitely worth your time if you're trying to find it. It's a fun little game to play, although I don't play it that much because I played it many times, and it's only okay. It's a good game, but honestly, I don't know. It's by no means one of the best Luigi's Mansion games. Though I will say this as a little thought. It would be really cool if Nintendo actually released this on the Switch eShop. Even for $10, just release this game on the Switch eShop with Joy-Con support. That'd be so awesome. They released Crimson Blast on the Switch. Just do the same with this game. Why not? But I don't know. That's really all I have to say about the arcade game. It's not really a lot for me to say. It's basically just Dark Moon as an on-rail shooter, but it's still pretty cool regardless. Now, what isn't so cool is the Luigi's Mansion D-Make for the 3DS. I remember when this thing was first revealed, I was absolutely bummed out. I was so disappointed to see how Luigi's Mansion felt as if it was basically just being treated as a little side project. Because keep in mind, this game was revealed in early 2018 when the Switch was already out for at least a year. And Luigi's Mansion didn't have much representation at the time. So what do? They remake, I put that in air quotes, the original game for the 3DS. Not the Switch. Literally everybody was questioning why this was the case. And we would eventually find out, which we'll find out with the next game. But Man, people were not happy with this, myself included. I wish that there was a remake of the first game on the Switch, but I don't know if we're gonna see that. We may see it, time will tell, but I don't know. But when the game would eventually release in late 2018, I downloaded on the eShop, but even though I was kind of reluctant to, but I did play through the remake, and I'm not a big fan of it. I have a lot of issues with it, though to be fair, there are a couple positives. They did at least recreate the game somewhat well. Like, it is still the original game at the end of the day. They did at least actually add quite a bit of content. Like, they do add some multiplayer in the form of, like, actual co-op with Luigi and Gooigi. There's also, like, a boss rush mode where you can take on the Portrait Ghost, which I really like. This is something that's really, really cool. It's a little something to add replayability, and also achievements as well, which I love the addition of achievements. It's so cool. But those are my only positives, and the only real reason I would play it. I mean, it also has, like, an actual good hidden mansion, though, but even then, though, you could just play the PAL version of the original game, which gives you an even better hidden mansion, so it's like, eh. But even so, though, I don't like this remake for two big issues: graphics and gameplay. Now, the graphics, I will say it right now, they don't look the best. Remember what I said before in Dark Moon and how I think that style worked better for the 3DS and how the original game style wouldn't work that well in the 3DS? Yeah, it shows. It just looks so off. It doesn't even look creepy or anything like that. It just looks so off. Ghosts just look so odd, and the frame rate for the game is not good. I don't even think it hits 30 FPS, but it's not very good at all. And even ghost catching is a little different now as well. Just given the fact that you probably wouldn't have two sticks, they made ghost catching a little easier in the sense that they don't pull back nearly as much as they did before. But even so, though, like, I feel like the frame rate mixed with the graphics just make the game look so blah. The original Luigi's Mansion was a GameCube tech demo to show off the graphical capabilities of the GameCube. And boy did it do that, but the 3DS remake just feels awful in comparison. It just looks terrible in comparison. And like, I know it's a 3DS, but still, it doesn't look good. Especially like just some of the little things, like Luigi's model is literally just taken from Dark Moon. It's not even a custom model or anything like that. It's just not good, and the gameplay just feels so cramped. It works, but it's nowhere near as good as using an actual GameCube controller. Or really, any controller that actually has two sticks and has more hand placement. Because goddamn, the 3DS is too small to really play this kind of game on. And like, I just did not like the timing of the game either. Like, seriously, if they released this in, like, 2016, I would be a little bit more okay with this, even if I would eventually come to realize how much more inferior it is. But even so, though, I mean, at least they would have released it in 2016, so at least someone would have bought it. But no, they released it in October of 2018, where by that point, we already had a new Luigi's Mansion game going on the Switch eventually, so there was no reason to buy this game. So, yeah. Ultimately, I don't like the remake, and I absolutely do not recommend this. Play the original game on the actual GameCube. Definitely the PAL version. Don't bother with the 3DS remake. It's just not good. Now, what is really good is Luigi's Mansion 3. Now, while I was really, really disappointed about the 3DS remake's reveal, I was ecstatic to see Luigi's Mansion 3 revealed for, not the 3DS, but the Nintendo Switch. Oh, I was so happy. I followed this game very closely throughout its entire development, from reveal to release, and I've got to say, Luigi's Mansion 3 absolutely nailed it out of the park in what I wanted. This legit feels like a Luigi's Mansion game that would exist within 2019. It's so goddamn good. Seriously. Look at this game's graphics. They're so good. Everything is so well animated. Seriously, I thought they wouldn't even do nearly as much animation, but no, I think they did even more animation and more cutscenes in 3 than they did in Dark Moon. Seriously, you may as well have Next Level make a Luigi's Mansion movie at that point, Nintendo. They could just very well do it. But I don't know. But even so, though, this game is absolutely beautiful. It has so much character all over the place. There's so much style over here. And well, yeah, I obviously prefer the original game style. It still looks really, really good here. And the gameplay just feels so good. Even if it is a little mind-numbing, it's still a lot of fun and very satisfying to slam ghosts into the ground. It's just so goddamn good. And I feel, and the puzzles are a lot better as well. They're not nearly as in your face as they were in Dark Moon. And thank God that most puzzles aren't that irritating like they were in Dark Moon. Like, some of the ones in Dark Moon were just kind of annoying and tedious. But here in 3, I don't really feel like that's the case as much. I really, really like that. Also, Luigi's Mansion 3 would introduce a lot of brand new mechanics, such as the suction shot, or whatever the hell it is. Basically, the plunger that you hook onto objects to move them out of your way. Definitely called this, by the way. Also, the burst, or the fart, or whatever, which basically can push things away from you, and also allows you to kind of do a bit of a mini jump. You see, in the Luigi's Mansion games, you can't really jump at all, which is kind of weird since Luigi is like the best jumper in like all the Mario games, but I guess the burst does a little bit. Also, Luigi makes an actual appearance in 3, and he also works in the same similar kind of way as the 3DS remake, as he does function as a multiplayer co-op sort of thing. However, he does have various advantages over Luigi, as he can slip through grates and whatnot, but he is, well, allergic to water, as whenever he touches water, well, he dies, but regenerates immediately once that happens, so it's not really that big of a loss. But honestly though, Luigi's Mansion 3 is so goddamn good. It's such a treat to play, but even replaying it again just kind of teaches me, once again, how good I love this game and why I love Luigi's Mansion so much. And that's why Luigi's Mansion 3 is my favorite Luigi's Mansion game. I know that it's a little bit of a daring thing to say, but I just love 3 so much. It has so much character. It's just so much fun to play. It's just great. It's amazing. Absolute masterpiece. Play it if you can. But yeah, that was basically the retrospective. So this was basically me going over all the Luigi's Mansion games. Well, maybe not all the Luigi's Mansion games, but all the major ones. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you guys have a good, happy Halloween as well. Unless you're not watching it on Halloween, in which case you cannot have a happy Halloween. And let me know what you think of the games, and let me know which Luigi's Mansion is your favorite or least favorite and why in the comment section below. And if this is your first time checking out my channel, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Please. Please. But with that being said, this is NCSO7 signing out. Peace.